All right, so let's get this started. So welcome everybody. Good afternoon. This is part three of our 29's Purpose First webinar series. Today we're talking to chef and owner Chad Rosenthal, who owns Lucky Well out in Ambler, right? Ambler,
Yep.
Ambler, PA. I'm one of your co-hosts today. I'm Greg Riccardi, President and CEO of 29. I'm joined here with Jason Widener, who's our Chief Operating Officer. Today we're going to talk about Chad, where the passion, how he got into cooking. We're going to talk about the food industry. We're going to talk about the people that he's worked with, who he's touched, who he's supported, who supported him, and then we'll get into the effects of the pandemic. It's pretty much devastated the food industry and the restaurant business. We're going to talk about this has affected and created a forced evolution around his business and what he's doing to kind of persist through that. So I'm going to pass it over to Jason right now. We're going to kick this thing off and talk to Chad about kind of where it all started.
Thanks, Greg. Chad, first, thanks for joining, bud.
Thank you.
We've now known each other for the better part of the last year, and it's been a hell of a ride. So thanks for the friendship. It's been nuts.
Yeah.
So to just jump into this, we've done, now this is webinar number 3, and I think you know about our business. We have pivoted, I'd say more evolved, into a business that focuses primarily on helping other businesses find purpose. And we use a stat. One of our clients, Accenture, posted a stat about a year ago, actually, a little over a year ago. And they were talking about millennial audiences and how they just won't shop a brand to the extent of about 70% of them unless they can determine the purpose tied to a brand. And so it's become this thing. It's just not a sort of a nice to have or a component. It's really becoming a critical piece to businesses and their own success, and certainly now more than ever with everything that's going on around us. So long-winded way of getting to, we start every one of these with a pretty simple question. We think that our perspective has started to evolve, not just purpose, but also now a concept of forced evolution. There's the people, much like yourself, that are constantly evolving, and there's other ones that struggle with it, but sometimes they're forced to. So we start with a question every time. So I'm going to throw you the first softball here, but I'd like you to elaborate on this one. Especially, how do you evolve really when you have no choice but to evolve? Especially given the backdrop of today, and we'll come back to that later on in this webinar, but as someone that has pivoted a bunch of times, and seemingly for me on the outside, I think for others that have experienced the Lucky Well, they see the constant evolution, and so maybe it's a little bit of a softball, and I say that to you because this is something you do pretty well already. But remember, we've got entrepreneurs here on this. We've got other food people on this. We've got other innovators, we've got brand leaders. So think about the question in the context of maybe some others. And look, our purpose with these is truly to take this type of information, interview people like you that are doing this in an effort to help others figure it out too. So that's the first thing I'd like you to touch on, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to thank you guys, Jason, Greg, and your team for setting up the social stuff, Morgan and everyone, and you guys have been great to work with. And thanks for the people I see on the right-hand side of the screen. I know a lot of them, a couple Lucky Well regulars there, so it's great to see. I think it's just the way that I'm built. We kind of talked about this over the last few days. I'm a little definitely ADD. I just go. And I got in this business at a really young age. I just love to cook. I asked my dad for an easy bake oven when I was 5. And, after 39 years of figuring out why the hell I did that, it's like I like to feed people. And from simple snow days in Ambler when I opened 7 years ago in Ambler, where everyone just closes their door because they can't get staff or they can't get into work. I get in and I'm the only guy there who opens my kitchen by myself. I put together a menu on comforting foods that that I can cook myself for a bunch of people. I get one of my staff members to work the door and the phones, and we just go. It's just something I love to do. I love to feed people, and it keeps me moving and going. Over now 18 years doing this, you have to figure out how to feed people. It took me a little bit of time to learn this part is how do you do that and make money, right? And in this business, it's hard enough to make 1% versus 3% or even break even. And now during these times, it's even tougher. And I just love doing it, and that's kind of my passion. And when I'm not working my butt off in the restaurants, and I try to do things for charities like Phil Abundance and go down to Guantanamo Bay and feed the troops and things like that. I just love to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things there. And by the way, thanks for that work that you do. I mean, on behalf of everyone here present and everyone in our community, as a local person as well, it's not only is it appreciative, it's also inspirational. We there's not many people that can take passion and turn it into purpose like you have with the Lucky Well. But you mentioned no problem. You mentioned a couple of things, and I think these are somewhat hallmarks that we've seen in the work that we've been doing as well. We start getting involved with brands, and especially when you start talking with C-suite people, and it doesn't really matter the category. When they're trying to figure out, especially if it's after the fact, what their own actual why is to their business, it for some reason gets rather complicated rather quickly. And we spent a lot of time trying to remove noise and make things, sort of bring about an ultra sense of simplicity. And you literally mentioned exactly something that I think is a good thing to harp on is, your passion, but it's just literally boiling down to liking to feed people. When I think about that, it's you've already removed all the complexity from it, right? You have something that you can go back to that is probably a hallmark that probably doesn't ever waver, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I try to keep everything simple. Like, from the look of the Lucky Well to the food I put out, and there's times that I try to complicate things with trying to run some crazy food or, I'm never happy doing 1, 2, or 4 things. I just, keep going, which keeps the simplicity, which makes simplicity tougher. But it's funny during this time, with how hard it's been, it's almost been a little bit nice to be able to keep it simple again and go back to your core things that you learned how to do. I learned how to make barbecue 18 years ago, and we cut out all the rest of the menu, and we're just putting out barbecue and sides and feeding people. They're not coming in the door. We don't have to worry about, them at the door and getting them a drink and the bathrooms. It's strictly putting great food out and keeping it consistent and getting it to their car and feeding people. And it's been nice to see that. I mean, it's not the best for business without having the bar packed with live music on the weekends and complicating the business. If the Lucky Well was the size of Reader's Water Ice, I'd be making money right now. But it's not. So, I started at a place called Rosie's Barbecue. I don't know if you know anything about it. It was in Jacobtown. I opened a little one in Ambler. And you want to talk about simple, like that was simple. I just wanted it bigger,
Yeah, it's funny. I was just gonna ask you about this. A lot of people ask us, and it's happened a couple of times in these webinars about the starting point. Because when you're talking about taking passion, and anyone can have passion, but it's the point. And I'll get to a question here, but it's the point where you go, wait, that could be what I make my life about.
Right.
And we've had other entrepreneurs ask us, like, did you have an aha moment that said, "Oh, hey, I just made one heck of a badass piece of brisket. I think this is a business." You know what I mean? Was there that moment for you?
There definitely was, and it was like it was not good, and my wife thought I was nuts, and I had this could be a 2-hour webinar right here on how this all started, but I'll give you the cliff notes. Out of college. Cooked all through college in Columbus, Ohio, went to Ohio State. Out of college, I told my dad I want to go to culinary school, and he basically told me I was freaking crazy. Why do you want to work when everyone else wants to play? Blah, blah, blah. So I didn't. I needed a job. I got into the printing business, started selling direct mail printing, started my own company, which took me to China where I was printing children's books, and was making money, pretty good money. And the whole time I was a fine arts major in college. So always been a creative guy, always loved to create and be creative. And so even while I was traveling the world, really, in this industry, I was tasting things and eating things and learning how to cook different things. And took me to Memphis, Tennessee, where my largest client in the printing business was FedEx. And I would actually stay in by the way, it was great. I was like 24 and I stayed in a Westin in Memphis for 3 nights a week. I had a good time.
Little Beale Street?
Right behind Beale Street. And I started kind of like meeting all the people down there and learning about the barbecue guys. And I met a guy in a place called a barbecue shop. And this guy taught me how to make barbecue and taught me some tricks. And I always make the joke that I was the only Jew in suburban Philly that had a smoker that was like 20 feet in their backyard,
That's fairly unique.
So, yeah. So, I'm cooking whole hogs in my backyard in Upper Dublin. And, one thing led to another. And, I said, I want to get into the barbecue business, which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. And I had enough money to buy a little barbecue place in Jenkintown. He wanted to get out of the business, went there, opened another. And then, it was really tough making business. Loved Rosie's Barbecue. Loved what we did. I had 2 pretty crappy locations. And this is a whole nother business side of it. But selling just barbecue is very difficult on the East Coast. It is very expensive, high quality meats out the door. You're just like, it's just impossible to make money. So that was kind of the point where I realized I'm doing this. And that's when I needed a full bar and live music, and met a partner, and we bought the building in Ambler, which is now the Lucky Well, and did some TV in between there. And again, this is a long story, but I don't want to bore you guys, but that's what happened. And, I work hard, man. I don't stop. Like it's good sometimes, and sometimes it's not, but
Well, it's a good segue. Yeah. So thanks for that. And I think, if I can spit back at you the answer, and we've had probably 50-50 shot and other folks that we've asked the same question to about that aha moment and the starting point. Sometimes it's just osmosis and an opportunity, right? That it's just hey, this sort of path that sort of chose me. Yeah. Other people do have like this aha moment, and it's like big. I just knew, and the osmosis it just sort of came about, and it's sort of I guess a segue into life. I mean, sometimes life just presents a path. But the thing that's interesting about your business that I think this is sort of the next phase of this webinar. And we actually just got a question from a Jared. Thank you, Jared, for your question. But it is also a segue to the next section of this, which is around purpose and how you've found purpose. So the starting point of passion, evolving into could this be a venture, and then figuring out the venture piece of it, and but now finding something greater than even just your own passion in it. So talk a little bit about, and you had mentioned this the other day, and look, especially the people that follow you or have experienced Lucky Well have seen the things that you've done, around your community, around the people associated with you. But talk a little bit about sort of like in your head and your heart, what that's become, because I took something you said the other day about people being a real purpose now as real literal. And I think it's pretty amazing. And it was a different thought that we hadn't really been thinking about. So talk about a little bit of that for the people on the webinar.
Yeah, I mean, go back to, where I started in this business. I don't think it was about, it was, the main purpose was feeding people. Like that's why I fell in love with cooking. And I think the reason that I got into the barbecue end of it, I was not culinary trained. I worked in a bunch of restaurants in school and fell in love with cooking. And being a self-taught chef, you experiment, and there's not a more experimental cuisine than barbecue. It's like you change one spice, one type of wood, 1 degree on how hot you're smoking stuff, one seasoning, and your baked beans. So it's like, it's really experimental. And I think that's why I fell in love with that. And to this day, still love barbecue and love not only cooking it, but learning about it and talking about it, tasting it and all that stuff. The purpose end of it is like, you get into this business and, it really is about feeding people and keeping people happy through food. And being in the restaurant business, I'm not sure what it is that everyone thinks kind of guys in restaurants make a ton of money, because they don't. Even the biggest, fanciest restaurants, they just don't make much money, and people always want donations. I could have 100 people come in a day that want donations, right? And I don't know why restaurants are that place. It's like, they're not going into Bloomingdale's and asking for a pocketbook for, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't get.
I'm still floored by you using the word pocketbook. People still say that? I thought I was the only one that said pocketbook.
Oh, is that not a word anymore?
I was told a couple months ago it's just a bag now.
Oh.
I don't know.
All right. I mean, I didn't know. I haven't bought one in a
It
while,
doesn't sit in a pocket, and it's not a book, so I'm not quite sure where the name.
Yeah, it's not a
pocket. I think we're all relatively the same time frame of growing up.
I'm getting old, man. I said laptop the other day to someone I work with, and they thought I was nuts.
Maybe we should have changed this to people, purpose, and pocketbooks.
I like that. So yeah, I but through all these donations, I've met some great organizations, and being in a business and my food caters very well. It's very homey. It's comforting food. I started feeding homeless shelters, and I would cook tons of turkeys during Thanksgiving, smoked turkeys, and I'd give them to my staff, and I try to sell them, and there was always turkeys left over, and I'd go downtown and give them to homeless shelters with Project Home, and I worked with Phil Abundance and a bunch of other guys. And I started enjoying it. It's another way of feeding people, making people feel comfortable. And there you go. There's some other. So, I kind of, it's a part of the business that I just really love is being able to just make people happy. I think that's really my best part of the business is when the Lucky Well is packed, and I can come out on the floor and see people and see their faces and know that they're enjoying whatever they're eating, and being able to get my business to the point where I can get the heck out of the restaurant and do these great events like in Guantanamo Bay and teaching kids cooking at camps, and then you have staff and being able to feed my staff and financially and at the restaurant, and it's a people business, man. If you can't get along with people, you're not gonna make it very long in the restaurant business. It's not easy.
Yeah, you said a couple things, and I think that is absolutely a hallmark of great shops. If you see that, they're putting their staff first and the people first, then they tend to succeed. We've found that with other purpose-based consulting we've done. It always seems to come back to one singular moment of putting people first. I'm going to maybe spit back some of your words for the crowd in a slightly different way, but I think for learnings for some other folks here, you mentioned a couple of things. One is about keeping people happy and seeing them smiling as you're walking through. There's this whole idea, it seems like, of you, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like just taking pure joy in other people's joy, and somewhere in there it seems like a feeling of empathy almost, like not to suggest that it's a judgmental piece or this person needs me to feel bad for them, but it's a starting point of understanding how whatever it is that you're doing can make someone else feel differently, and maybe what their starting point might be. And we've started to find out a lot where the businesses, we talk about Patagonia, completely different category, right? We talk about them all the time. Similar starting point, just the passion, started making better crampons. It's turned into a multi-billion-dollar business. But he had this quote like I mentioned to you the other day, was every time I did something that was a positive for the environment, I made more money. And I think you have a similar mentality here, where every time you're doing something for someone else, it seems like you've had more success. Would that be an accurate way to put it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing how sometimes you do things like that, and they always lead to other and bigger opportunities. I mean, I'm still working on the Lucky Well Commissary, which originally was going to be in the Philadelphia location that I'm actually going to be opening very soon. Started working with and feeding these homeless shelters in the city, and like before you go to a homeless shelter, you hear it and you're like, you just picture this like tent, right, with people sleeping on the floor, and then you go to these homeless shelters and you're like, and I don't only feed them, but I would the first time I did it was a Thanksgiving dinner, and they wanted it. It was with Project Home. I'm not sure if you know them, but it wasn't just bringing turkey and cornbread stuffing. It was actually sitting down and hanging out with these people and making them feel like they're enjoying Thanksgiving. And these are people that just one thing led to another, and they ended up there. I mean, these were normal people, and I'm like, you know what? It's hard enough to find staff in the restaurant business in the suburbs. It's like, why not give these people their shot and an opportunity to do a simple job, to train them simple, wash dishes, make my barbecue sauce, which is not very tough. It's a recipe, and you put everything in a pot and you stir it. So it's like, give these people simple training and try to get them back on their feet. And I'm still working towards that. This COVID thing kind of crushed a few of those projects, but I love doing it. And if you can turn those into a business, that whether it's a nonprofit or something that helps your business succeed, then like that's like win-win, the best thing in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think having experienced your shop too, you definitely you can feel it around the whole organization, down from, and it is. I think it's a top to bottom, and it's definitely I would guess that just the example that you just gave, that when you give someone a chance, sure there's a different level of respect that they have for the organization and for you, but then also the people that they're serving. It's actually an interesting segue, because we did get a question about, if you've had this passion and you've found this purpose, how do you actually get that to translate to the people on your front lines? Like, so as you know, I'm a fan of Hunter and his heavy pour.
Yeah.
It was also a fine gentleman, but I would just be curious, do you have any sort of tricks of the trade on how to sort of translate your feelings about this, but then to get it into the staff and the people that are also interacting with a lot of people that are your stakeholders?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts at the top. Obviously, I mean, I'm there. If the kitchen's getting crushed, I'm in the trenches. I'm out on the floor. I'm fixing toilets. I'm like, they see me working, and we've been there 7 years, and I still have probably 5 or 6 key employees that have been with me since day one, that if you come to the Lucky Well, pretty much everyone knows. And it's I always say, like, and this is another thing we can talk about, is going to change, but the hardest part about finding hospitality staff in the suburbs is there's not a lot of people that of really like career cooks, career chefs, career servers, where it's a job. I need a job. I need to make a little bit of money. And it's hard to really get them to buy into the passion and, what the Lucky Well is, 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, which turns into a blues club, and why that works, and why we do that. And, why, there's so many little things that and people in the industry, like the last table of the night is always the most important table, because that's usually where you kind of, let your guard down, and you want to clean up, and you want to have a cocktail at the bar, and you want to, it's like in the beginning of when I got into this business, it was like, that was always the table you screwed up and went on Yelp and ruined your whole week, right? It's like, you need to keep your guard on till till that kitchen is closed, until we don't have a hostess at the door anymore, and it really just turns into a zoo club. But like, you need to be there. You can't just, and you need to do it yourself. And they need to hear you talk about the Lucky Well and talk about the food and talk about why you do what you do. And that gets harder as you grow and open locations. And but I think, I try to, touch every one of them every week. And, I think they see my passion in what I do, whether it's through social media or in the restaurant. And for the most part, it shows from them. It's gonna be tough now. I mean, that's the hardest part about this is, as much as I want to bring back all my staff, I know it's just not possible business wise. I mean, that is in a staff driven people business right now. That's where we're just totally unclear, is like, what do we need? The whole PPP thing we could talk about later, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's great, but I don't need people because I don't have a restaurant, right?
Chad, that's actually a really good point, because I think part of what's happened, and Jason and I both have food experiences. We both we're part of kind of restaurants, and having that entity and that passion, and the whole experience that you talk about with serving people and connecting with people is really a major driver in the role. And then the people that you work with, and those people become passionate about not just what you do, but also the brand itself. And then we kind of roll into this crazy pandemic world that we're in, where all of a sudden it's like everything that we knew as a normal has just been completely destroyed.
Right.
To the point where you have to make hard decisions, where it's like, who's coming back and who's not coming back, or who can come back, and what does the future hold? And I think there's, and this is what we've been talking a lot about when it comes to kind of the purpose behind what we do, and this forced evolution aspect, where we've all been forced to some aspect within our business to evolve. And what does that evolution look like? And the level of uncertainty has forced us into a position where we have to make decisions that there is no reference point to what this is, and we're being guided by from a governmental standpoint of what these guidelines are and what we need to do and how to keep people safe. And at the same time, we all need to live, and we need our livelihoods to kind of continue. So I think this is a good point to kind of talk about how the effect, because the restaurant industry, the food industry, hospitality industry has just been completely decimated by this pandemic. And when we first talked, I mean, you had such a great story about there's a lot of restaurants out there. There's a lot of businesses that just kind of clammed up and said, okay, I'm just going to wait this out. We'll conserve. You kind of took it head on. You made some hard decisions in the beginning, but you kind of jumped into the mix and kind of focused on, how do I keep my brand alive? How do I keep the people that I'm with and care about safe? But how do I continue that passion and push it out so that there will be a Lucky Well in the future, and kind of moving on. So I'd like to hear a little bit about kind of what started that, what happened when the pandemic hit, what ran through your mind, and kind of how you adjusted and how you took that head on.
Yeah, I mean, it was really bizarre. I mean, as everyone knows, when it started, it was so confusing. But a lot of people closed. A lot of people closed for months. I just kept going. I totally switched gears. The hard decision was that next day, I just wrote all of my staff and I said, listen, guys, I want all of you to file unemployment right now. And we could talk about, who I'm going to be able to use to do this, but I want to do delivery and I want to do curbside takeout. Before they even said that was the way to go, we started doing it. And I'm wearing this little hat here that I had made by the Ambler Skate Shop guys. But I'm like, I thought to myself, people are really uncomfortable with Uber drivers and just people using their own car. I'm like, what would be better than just like the owner of the restaurant just saying, I'm the delivery guy, right? And I kept one of my chef and Ambler on. I kept my GM on, and we just went, and it turned into a really cool thing. We, used social media to kind of take some pictures of me delivering, and people were leaving notes for me at their door. And I think it was an advantage for us that we did that from the beginning. I did close my Warrington location. I feel like during that time, people were supporting people they knew and loved. We were so new there. We were 6 months old, and no one really even knew us yet. So and we're in a big fancy shopping center with a high rent. And I thought it made more sense to just shut that one down and let everyone file unemployment over there. The unemployment story is a whole nother issue. The unemployment rates are so high right now that these people are happy. I mean, they're happy at home right now. I mean, of course, that's going to end very soon. And the smart ones are going to want to come back. I mean, we're right now in kind of the decision-making process on how we want to open. And like you said, it's every day things change. Like after this webinar, I'm going to check my phone and something else is going to change. Whether, the COVID rates raise, and maybe we're not going to be able to open on June 5th for outdoor seating. And how does outdoor seating work? I mean, the way my brain doesn't stop, like, I think I slept an hour last night. It's like, it's not just, okay, we can sit people outside. You got to socially distance, and how are we going to get the food to them, and how are they going to get in to use the bathroom, and how are we going to monitor that, and how are we going to fill these seats, and what are we going to serve food on, and are we going to give them, paper plates, and it's good that I have a great staff that's still working with me through all this. My goal is to bring back as many of these people as possible. For example, prior to this, I had about 36 in Ambler. I had about 36 in Warrington, and I was opening Philly. It's just, if June 5th he said we can have outdoor seating, I won't have outdoor seating in Ambler. It just makes no sense. I have 6 seats out front. And I am working with the town of Ambler to try to do something pretty cool that we'll talk about at a later date. But it's difficult. And even when it goes in green, they say you can have 50% capacity. You can't operate at 50% capacity in a restaurant. Your restaurants are built to make a very small amount of profit at full capacity. So it's very difficult. But we learned a lot of great things. I think what I went into first before I went everywhere, because I'm ADD and that's what I do. I think it's smart that we stayed at it. I think keeping the momentum through this, feeding people like you see there, and feeding our guests kind of keeps them in the front of their minds, and keeps the Lucky Well in front of them versus some other restaurants that completely shut it down. I think it's a little bit tougher to get back and to kind of get the word out that we're opening now. We're doing takeout or curbside. So I think it was a good move for us. We were able to pay some bills, stay active, keep the food clean, keep the restaurant clean. Projects that we would never be able to do in the real world in the restaurant.
Yeah, I also think that there's an aspect of, because essentially part of this section is called persistence. So the aspect of, continuing to stay open and learning to adapt, on a weekly, daily basis, it creates, we talked about creativity in the beginning and how that passion drove creativity, and how you're constantly finding new ways to do things. As part of this process and this forced evolution, obviously is causing your business to evolve, but it's also causing you to be innovative in how you either operate or what you create or what you do. Can you talk a little bit about how this being forced to evolve has created new innovations within your own business that are going to actually carry on past this pandemic and create new opportunities for you in the future?
Yeah, I mean, like this curbside pickup and takeout. I mean, it's like you see up in that left-hand corner. I mean, we had cars from the front of the Lucky Well past Ambler Savings Bank. It was insane. And luckily, because of the pandemic, they didn't get too mad at us. But in a normal world, that can't happen. We can't hold up traffic. But our takeout business, was a business I've always wanted to grow at the Lucky Well. I mean, our food takes out great. It's barbecue. You can eat it cold and it's great. it's barbecue should be meant for taking out. So to learn about how to add online delivery, online ordering. We never had that. And now with our POS provider Toast, we are getting pretty good at it. Good at it. Look at our takeout containers, and working on that side of our business. And that is a side that I don't want to ever die. And it's growing every day. I mean, I think we did, over last year, 3 to 5% takeout, and it's been almost, forget the percentage, but online ordering for us is almost 70% of our business right now, which we never had it prior to this. So, if it comes back full force next year and we can keep some of this, it's a win-win. So that's good. I mean, we've really learned to use social media better to drive. I've always used social media to show what we do, my personal and the Lucky Well, and take great pictures of food, and it makes people hungry. It makes people want to come in. Some of the cool things we're doing in the community, like feeding the police officers and all that. But being able to, and this isn't, there's some really cool things now through Instagram and Facebook to drive people to, with one click, order ribs, which was never possible before. So, if there's some good that has come out of this, with my staff as well. I mean, they're tighter. We're cleaner than ever. And my core staff is operating really well. So the people that come out of this will come out of this stronger. But they will be different, and the business will operate different. You just kind of have to figure it out and make changes.
Ted, on that note, so I appreciate all that. I got a bunch of notes I'll come back to at the end here, because I think that was a lot in there. I think there's really good points in it, especially the storytelling piece. You're right. You have been very active in that, but it was interesting that you sort of spun it around to, it's been the way you've stayed connected to people, which is kind of interesting. But on that note, let the three of us just take it to a different plane here on the innovation side. What is it you see? Let's take us 3, 6, 9 months out. Where do you see the opportunities? To your point about this forced evolution and the ways that you figured it out thus far, which I as someone who was sitting those lines on Butler, I was shocked that cops were sort of letting us all sit there waiting for food. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But sort of let your mind, as an innovative guy, let your mind wander a little bit on what the future could be and where those opportunities might lie. Because we do have a question here on tips around being persistent through this, which I think you kind of just went through. But where is your mind, which seems always a couple steps ahead at now for this particular category?
Yeah, so I think prior to COVID, the industry was changing anyway. I mean, there are people saying that sit-down restaurants will not even be a thing in 10 years. It's kind of all going to that delivery. And one thing that was kind of my mission and my hospitality and what I wanted the Lucky Well to be, when we opened in Philly and opened in Chicago, which is still going to happen, just going to get delayed, was an experience. Because Amazon can't deliver an experience. You can get a great burger to you can get great ribs to your door, you can get great Indian to your door, but you can't get the best live blues singing right into your ear with a Manhattan in your hand, and a 20-year-old and a 70-year-old dancing on the dance floor, and you can't get that experience, and you can't get the smell of the smoke, and you can't. So now this happened, right? And the only reason we make some money at the Lucky Well is because on Fridays and Saturday nights it's a zoo, and it's the coolest zoo ever, and you've been there, and it's an experience. And so kind of my focus now is how in this new environment can we create that same or different experience, but it must be an experience And that's what I'm working on. My Philly location, which I'm going to try to open in July, was built for this environment, was quicker service. You're stepping up and you're seeing, I had a wood burning broiler made for me in Texas, and we're cooking large format steaks and barbecued oysters, and it's going to be right in front of you. So you're not going to wait in line for your food, but you are going to walk through the line so you can see. And I'm hoping that comes back, and we're building outdoor tables, which is going to be great, and that'll be an experience in itself. But I don't think the experiences will go away. I think this will come back. Do I think it'll come back by the end of this year? No. If the governor says in green in July 15th, you can open up inside, I might not even open up inside in Ambler. I might ride out the takeout curbside and do some cool pop-ups and feed people for the rest of the year and try to bring it back in 2021. I just don't know, if it makes sense, a financial sense, and we just aren't in a position to lose money. We can break even. I'm happy breaking even and keeping people working and putting great food out and feeding people, but losing money is not a good thing.
So, well, a couple of things to come back to there, but not the least of which being, this whole section was about perseverance, and you just mentioned, I think, for those of you that are on this webinar hearing it first about Lucky Well going to Philly, I mean, the idea of not just survival, and I think many restaurateurs like yourself are probably thinking about that now, is not what's on your mind. It's actually expansion. And
yeah.
What I take out of that, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, because again, we had a couple questions about perseverance. It doesn't sound like you have fear with this, or is that just?
Yeah, that's another small fault of mine. I go, and it doesn't always work. This reset for some people could be a really good thing. It's a weird time. I mean, there's going to be a lot of restaurants going out of business, unfortunately. And there's a lot of reasons why restaurants won't be able to reopen. And, I think one of the biggest reasons in restaurants, and we talked about how small the profit margins are, is, there's food vendors, and that's your biggest kind of creditor, right? And they give you 30, 45-day terms. And I think, that we've a lot of these guys, they put people's food bills on hold, right? But the problem is, if you're closed and then all of a sudden you do no business for 2-3 months, when they say, okay, we're going to reopen, they're going to want a big chunk of money. And that money might not be available because there's just no money coming in. It's not a good time to ask for money. It's not a good time to find investors. So it's good that we kept operating and we kept paying bills. And I think we're in a good position. I do want to expand. I love this is going to come back. People, this is America. Like, we're not going to stay in and do nothing for the next 3 years. I mean, I am also, though, not a believer in we needed to open a month ago or we even need to open right now. I think it's smart. Because, and back to the PPP money and all that. But if this thing comes back, that's going to be the biggest disaster, because it's going to be, okay, come back off unemployment. We're going to hire you all, and we're going to have this full staff. And then all of a sudden they shut it down again. And in my industry, we can go into the prices of meat and the meat factories closed and all that, which is a whole nother factor into it. But, I think it's a good time to expand in a smaller, simpler way where, you take out all that noise and just keep it simple. All we got to do is put out great barbecue, great sides for takeout, outdoor seating, and at a later date, we're kind of using this time right now to hone in on the core food. All the restaurants making the core recipes and the stuff that I learned to cook 18 years ago, great, and the best. And then we can figure out, how do we open up the coolest cocktail bar, and how do we bring these musicians back in and get a crowd at the bar again? And I'm making it sound like it's super easy. It's not. It takes money, and it takes a ton of thinking and planning. And you said the restaurant business was so hard from the start, which it is. There's like 400 things to do and check a day. This added another 100 to that list, right? So, but I love it. And I think the people that come out of this are going to be great. And I think people are going to appreciate that and stick with them.
Well said. Well said. Are you contemplating the rubber inner tubes that Secrets has launched down in Ocean City? Or have you seen that?
I did not see that. No.
You
got to send me.
They have literally inner tubes that you stand in the middle of that are on like these dollies that you push around that ensure that you're 6 feet apart. Kind of.
I saw that. Is that a legit thing?
I saw Chick-fil-A. Did you see the people taking orders at Chick-fil-A in these clear suits out in the line? Talk about some businesses. Though.
That was pre-COVID, wasn't it?
No. Oh, it could have been. Yeah, but it's funny though. You talk about COVID and like the businesses that are Amazon and like Chick-fil-A, they're killing it. That drive-through model is just like insane. If I could figure out how to do, it's like the oxymoron of what barbecue is. If I could figure out how to do barbecue quick through a window, we should talk about that. I mean, drive-through model is great,
So Chad, we typically leave a decent amount of time for questions, and some have been rolling in. So I'm going to just pause for a second and just anyone on the webinar, feel free to chime in with questions for where we're at.
I just saw that the questions on the right. I didn't realize that was there. So addressed.
For the most part, yeah, we've gone through most of these, and I think maybe we'll handle this. So yeah, while we're wrapping up here, everyone can certainly write in more questions. But Chad, I'm going to sort of recap a little bit here. We might spawn some other questions from people, but a couple things. Keeping it simple, sticking to your core. While still finding other ways to evolve. I'm just using some things that everyone can learn from today. But I keep coming back to this empathy piece, which I thought was really interesting. But then something two things that we keep hearing too. We had I personally actually had an account of mine through the agency. I had a C-suite person tell me a couple weeks ago that they felt that the key to being a solid leader was to walk the walk. And I heard you mention that a couple times, that in getting your staff to buy in, but really sort of live and breathe the purpose. It seems like your belief is that, well, if they see me doing it, and not just as delivery boy, but you mentioned cleaning toilets. It's like, if you've done everyone's job in your shop, they know that you've been there, done that, and honestly have empathy because you've done it. And I thought that was really interesting. And then the last one, and I'll throw it back to you, is this idea about experience. Our business, we're storytellers just like you are, and your experience is the story. And I've been through it. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's palpable. And I think whether that's in hospitality, entertainment, or we do work in everything from ad tech to spirits to everything else, and it seems like it's the same exact story actually, which is the good storytelling and the experience is critical.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And you hit on the kind of doing everything. I always say in my business, and you guys both know this, the secret weapon to a restaurant, the most important employee is that person that can do absolutely everything, from answer the phones to cook everything on the menu, to fixing toilets, to working the POS system, to locking the doors, if that's what I try to find, someone that can, and that person might not be called a general manager or a manager, just those people that can do absolutely anything. Because in a people business, people don't show up, and you need to pivot. And that's what I've kind of learned. You need to know how to do everything.
Yeah.
I think that's been important in my staff, and I got really, really good people. And you got to pay them well. Let's be honest. Like in my business, whether you're a server, you're going to be happy when you're busy because that's when you're making good money. They work hard. They work long hours, and you have to compensate them right, or they're going to go somewhere else. It's that kind of business. So it's not easy, but when you find the right ones, you hold them.
Yeah.
And you take them with you on major events, and when you feed the police and when you go to a homeless shelter, you offer them these opportunities. You can't do it all yourself, or they don't see what you're doing. So that's kind of something that I've always made sure I did.
It's interesting. I think that's also something that we've found fairly ubiquitous. That especially there's a technology tool set around surveying. It's called Net Promoter Score that a lot of online businesses utilize.
Right.
And now increasingly people beyond that. And the whole premise of it is that, if someone is willing to recommend you, that's sort of the highest level of sort of credibility, if you will.
Right.
And it's funny.
Right.
It's funny. They've spun that around to employee engagement. So one of the things you just said is that, basically taking care of my people, making sure that they have developmental opportunities and ultimately get compensated around that is critical to your success. And we've found the same thing. And if you look through actually NPS scoring, those businesses that have the highest level of employee engagement also have the highest level of shareholder value. And so it's like, again, it comes back to this people piece of it, because you've heard, no offense to them, but you have the opposite of the stories of, especially in your space, you take Chicky and Pete's skimming tips, right? It's like literally the exact opposite of what happens these days, of what will work.
Yeah, I mean, and now the dilemma I'm having is, let me just see this question here. Are you doing any barrel picks? Doing any barrel picks? Oh, that's fun. I think he's a. I think I know who that is. Do you know who that is?
I don't.
Bauer. I think he's a liquor photographer. I think. Oh, barrel picks. He means picking out a whiskey. All right, I'll get to that.
By the way, when you do get around to that, I'm happy to help out. So is Greg.
Yeah, you can come taste it with me in Kentucky. I had a trip to Kentucky to visit some distilleries to do just that right before this, and it got canceled. I was really not happy about it. But yeah, I mean, the dilemma now is I want, even through this, you have to, the way that we look at our businesses, we had to re-budget at 50% of everything. That's what I decided to do, right? So it's like, do I keep my core staff's salary, right, what they were making, or do I hire more staff and lower their salaries? That's kind of, and I feel like, if you're keeping the best of the best to stick with you, I almost feel like I got to keep paying them what they were making, right? It's not like, and that's a dilemma I'm having right now, is trying to figure that out. Like, how much staff do I bring back? A bunch of staff that I really, by the governor, I'm not going to be able to use, and lower some people's salaries. So it's tough. I mean, there's so many different moving parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot
yes,
of
I'm doing a
faced with that too. The especially with the payroll protection piece. We've been faced with similar challenges of how we handle our staff, and I agree with you. It's if you have the best of the best, you figure out a way to take care of them. And we've publicly said this, but we couldn't be more impressed with our folks through all of this. I'm sure you feel the same way. It's, people are dealing with a lot of stress in this. If you underestimate, look, no one really wants to complain. Everyone's dealing with this, right? But, people are powering through. And you mentioned America. To take this up to the country level. But it is true. I think you're right. Things will come back. I'm a hopeful guy. And I think our org is too. And, coming out of 2008, for those of you that have lived through it, we talk about all the time that there was an immense amount of innovation that came out of that time period. And you like to think that's what's happening now.
Absolutely. I mean, there'll be a big shakeup, and I guess I keep saying it. Things they have to be different, like they just have to be. But things will come back,
Yeah.
but things will be different, and kind of that's my job to figure out, what's going to be different and how we're going to roll with it, and all my suppliers are thinking the same things, and so we'll see what happens. But we're going to stay alive. We're not going anywhere.
I and many others appreciate you saying that. And Kenny, I'm excited to see what is next for you guys. You're always a step ahead, and so I guess we'll continue to watch anxiously. We did have one other question. I actually think it'd be a great way to shut down. I know you have a little bit of a surprise for people, but you also have someone asking, not even from Ambler area, how they can support you, and I think that's a fantastic question. Because I think we all, part of the reason we wanted you on today was to help support the Lucky Well and what you're doing, especially for all your people. So is there a way that we can get someone hooked up? Ed, I don't know where you're at, but thanks for the question.
Well, I know Ed, and I'm pretty sure he's in D.C. right now. Maybe he could say if I'm right, but no, man, you've been great, a supporter from back in the Rosie's barbecue days. So, just write us through social media, share our posts. Bingo. Bring me some some of that good whiskey up when you come up here, and we'll be here. And if you have any ideas on things that we should be doing, or I'm like I said, I don't stop. So I'm willing to try anything, and support us in any way. I think you've already bought some gift cards from me anyway, so you'll use them when you get here. But we're good. I appreciate you having us, everyone over here, for tuning in, and 29 and all you guys. It's been great.
So Chad, I just again, I want to thank you for your time and everybody who showed up. We've been doing these webinars every other week. We're actually got a special webinar next week, kind of on the topic and very pertinent to the current conditions. It's about the 30-day or the PA 30-day fund.
Okay.
We're going to be talking with Jeff Bartos, one of the co-creators of that non-institutional, privately funded fund, specifically designed to help small businesses in Pennsylvania. So it should be a great webinar. I ask everybody to go visit 29.com, Purpose First Workshops, or go purposefirst.com too as well. Check it out. It's going to be a great webinar, but appreciate everyone's time. And Chad, great to hear from you. Love the place, love the story, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. If you want to do this in the future, and I can get a bunch of chef friends on, and we can all talk about the industry as a whole, that would be great as well. So
yeah, maybe we can check in a couple weeks, couple months, and I think that's probably a good idea. We're actually getting some feedback as we're talking that people enjoyed this. I think revisiting in a not too distant future would be good.
Perfect.
All right, I'm going to go make some barbecue. Yeah, thanks guys. Take it easy.
Take care.
Cheers.